Today we're diving into a really thought-provoking theory from the book series The Wars of Light and Darkness. We're looking at Chapter 18, Paul the Law and Essene Grace, and it argues that the real story of one of history's most influential figures, well, it might not be what we've been told for the last 2,000 years. Let's get right into it. So, let's start with a simple question. Who was the Apostle Paul? It seems pretty straightforward, right? For so many of us, his story is one of the most familiar in all of Western history. But what if that story is missing a huge piece of the puzzle? You know the official version. He's Saul of Tarsus, this incredibly zealous Pharisee, persecuting the very first followers of Jesus. Then he has this massive, life-changing conversion on the road to Damascus, and boom, he becomes the Apostle Paul, the guy who's going to take Christianity to the rest of the world. But the Wars of Light and Darkness asks a fascinating question here. What if the source of Paul's truly revolutionary ideas, the very foundation of Christian doctrine, isn't what we think it is? What if the real key to understanding him lies hidden out in the desert, with a mysterious group of people who've mostly been left out of the story? Okay, to really get Saul, you first have to get his world. In first-century Judea, it was an absolute pressure cooker. It was just seething with messianic fervor and the simmering rebellion against Roman occupation. The whole land was on fire, so to speak. The Wars of Light and Darkness, it paints this picture of a society just crushed between the iron fist of Rome and a totally corrupt local establishment. You've got the Roman procurators with their heavy taxes, the collaborating temple priests called the Sadducees, the puppet Herodian royals, and the elite Pharisees enforcing religious law. And you know what? All of them saw this growing messianic movement as a massive threat to their power. And right into this powder keg steps Saul of Tarsus. Now, he's not just any Pharisee. Oh no, he's a Roman citizen, he's multilingual, he's brilliant, trained under the legendary Rabbi Gamaliel, and, this is crucial, he's basically the chief inquisitor for the ruling temple authorities. He was the establishment's perfect weapon. His mission, it was clear and it was brutal. Stamp out the movement known as the Sect of the Nazarenes. But the source points out something really interesting. They also had another name, an Essene name, the Way. See, Saul wasn't just having theological debates here. He was literally leading death squads to wipe out a revolution. Now, that famous story of Paul's conversion on the road to Damascus, it doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It has this violent and, according to the Wars of Light and Darkness, an often ignored backstory. So, citing some early church texts, the book lays out what happened right before. There's this week-long public debate in Jerusalem between James, the brother of Jesus, and the chief priests. On the last day, it just explodes into violence. Saul himself allegedly attacks James with a burning piece of wood from the altar. James is basically left for dead but gets smuggled out of the city that night. So you see, Saul's trip to Damascus wasn't random at all. It was a targeted manhunt. He was going after the movement's escaped leaders. And this is where the story we all know and remember picks up. The great light, the voice from the heavens, the conversion of the church's #1 enemy into its greatest champion. But what happens right after this moment? That's the key to this whole mystery. Paul himself tells us in his letter to the Galatians. And get this, he says he didn't go to Jerusalem to meet the other apostles. Nope. Instead, he just vanishes for 3 whole years. He says he went into Arabia, but where exactly was that and why for 3 years? Well, the source argues that Arabia wasn't just some random spot in the desert. In the first century, that was a known name for the rugged wilderness of Trachonitis, which just so happened to be the heartland of the Essene community. And what about those 3 years? Well, according to the historian Josephus and the Dead Sea Scrolls, 3 years was the exact amount of time required for a new convert to be fully initiated into the Essene community and learn all their secret doctrines. That is one heck of a coincidence, isn't it? So the Wars of Light and Darkness puts forward this incredible hypothesis. Paul, the former Pharisee, spent his 3 lost years not alone in the desert, but in intensive training, being schooled in the deepest, most secret theology of the Essenes. And this is why that matters so much. The absolute core of Paul's revolutionary theology is justification by faith, not by works of the law. This was a central pillar of Essene belief, and it was the complete opposite of the Pharisaic tradition Paul was supposedly from. This theory suggests the very bedrock of Christian faith might actually come from a place nobody expected. The source draws a direct line from the writings of the Essene's mysterious founder, a figure they only called the Teacher of Righteousness, straight to the letters written by the Apostle Paul. And when you actually put their words side by side, the parallels are they're stunning. On Justification, Paul says, "By the works of the law, no flesh will be justified." The Teacher of Righteousness wrote, "Only by your goodness is man acquitted." It's the same idea. Then there's the cosmic battle. Paul asks, what accord has Christ with Belial? Now, Belial is a name for Satan found all over the Dead Sea Scrolls, but Paul only uses it once in the entire New Testament. The language, the concepts, the whole theological framework, it's a match. So if Paul's theology is actually Essene theology, it suddenly explains all that intense and, let's be honest, often confusing conflict we read about in the New Testament between Paul and the original apostles back in Jerusalem. The wars of light and darkness really shines a light on this fundamental tension. See, the Jerusalem leaders, James, Peter, John, their authority came from the fact that they physically walked and talked with Jesus of the flesh. Theirs was a faith rooted in that experience and in Jewish law. But Paul's authority, it came from a mystical vision of the resurrected heavenly Christ of the Spirit. And if this is true, from 3 years of secret Essene initiation, they weren't just having a minor disagreement. They were preaching 2 very different gospels. And Paul did not pull any punches. He openly challenges the authority of the Jerusalem leaders in his letters, basically dismissing them as those who are supposed to be pillars, and saying whatever they once were is of no consequence to me. I mean, those are fighting words. So the argument presented in the Wars of Light and Darkness is really this. Paul, now armed with this grace-focused, mystical Essene theology, was the perfect person to translate a deeply Jewish messianic movement into a universal message for the entire non-Jewish world. He was the bridge. And that's the really provocative question we're left with. It challenges the traditional narrative right down to its foundations. If Christianity wasn't a clean break from Judaism, but was actually the adaptation of a secret, mystical Jewish tradition for a global audience, how does that change how we see everything? Our history, our faith, the origins of the entire modern Western world? Please like and subscribe for more videos like this. For more information or to purchase this full volume, please press on the link in the description.